it's such an inside audience. But I'll do my best to give my practice presentation to the camera and you. Thank you. So, I will begin. And yes, I am Tim Vacker. And thank you. And first, I would like to thank Ryan for inviting me to participate in this lecture series. I'm really honored to be talking in conjunction with the 2016 Big Click Festival, and even more honored that this is kind of honoring Jean Hargrove. I think that's wonderful. I used to really enjoy talking photography with her, and her photographs really intrigued me. So that was, I think that's wonderful. I'm also honored to be speaking in between Merylis Wolfgang and Joe Windisch. This is great, so thank you. And most importantly, thank you. Actually, thank all of you for coming to my presentation. I appreciate it. So, when I was putting this together, the way it sort of shook out was in three sort of segments. And with the first half of my career, which was film-based, and as was everyone's in the 80s. And then I transitioned quicker than I anticipated into digital. And then right before I retired from Georgia College, things took an interesting turn. And then when I retired, I went in kind of a different direction. So anyway, I think there's kind of three phases to that, and that's what I'm going to try and sort of hit here. But if you saw the title of my presentation, a phrase that kept coming up throughout my career when I would be talking to, according to the context, whatever you wanted to call them, whether they were client, requestor, customer, whatever, when I would be asking them, what do you want to do with this picture? What kind of picture do you want me to take? What are you looking for? That kind of thing. Invariably, at some point they would come out with, well, you're the artist. You do what you feel is best. And I would quickly remind them, I'm not an artist. I'm a technician. Because I know a number of artists. Merylis is certainly more of an artist kind of thing. And Joe is a bit of an artist too. And I never really had, I'm completely uneducated when it comes to art. But whatever artistry comes up in my photography, it comes from kind of the sort of the rules of composition, the basics of exposure. It's more from a technical aspect. And so I always considered myself a technician, but apparently some artistry kind of crept into a lot of my photographs through those techniques, I guess. So that's kind of what this presentation is going to keep sort of grounding to, is techniques or technique, but I'm going to try not to get too deep in the weeds of real technical nuts and bolts and stuff. But when I started, I was finishing my undergraduate work at Georgia College, needed an elective, and then I saw photography. Oh, I'll take a photography course for an elective. And at this point, I have to acknowledge my first really important person in my career, and that was my photography instructor, Roger McLeod. And Roger is the one that really hooked me into photography, and he's the one that pushed me. He's the one that kicked me in the bum and made me research, made me learn a lot of things, ask questions to myself and learn these things on my own. And that one elective turned into the 4 courses that gave me a photography minor. And then that, as soon as I graduated, the door opened for the photography position at the college, and so I became the university photographer. It was very unintentional, but fortuitous. And so then, like 2 months after I started, I got a phone call from Joe DeGrandis. Do you all remember Joe DeGrandis, the photographer? Okay. And he called, he heard about me, he called asking if I knew of any students that would be interested and capable of assisting him with his wedding photography. I told him I had just started, didn't really know any students yet, but if I would keep my ear to the ground, if I heard of anyone, I would have them contact him. I thought about it overnight, called him back the next day and said, hey, do you think maybe I could help you? He said, yeah, come on out, let's talk. So 14 years of wedding photography with Joe DeGrandis, I have to say that Joe truly became my photography mentor. While Roger taught me the technical skills, how to set up a camera, how to take pictures, how to process film, how to print pictures in the darkroom, it was really Joe that taught me the business of photography. And when I say business, I'm not just talking about the cash part, but the business of, come on in, thanks, the business of how to deal with the people that you have to deal with, how to pose groups of people, and how to, and one of what I think is the key difference here, and is that artists often have a bit more time to create their works. Not always, I grant you, but they usually have a lot more time. When you're in the business side of photography, especially weddings, you have a very limited amount of time to do what you are asked to do. So you really have to toe that line between how can I get the best picture I can get, each picture you take, without, it's probably not going to be the perfect picture, but you've got to take a picture, a good picture, and move on to the next picture, and then the next one, and get it done in a few hours. And so that's the real business side of it. And that was, I probably learned more about being a career photographer from Joe than I did from anything else that I did. But let's get back to film a little bit. It's a lot of what I did for the college was taking slides, because most of the publications and the printing companies at the time, they wanted transparencies to put in publications. And we also did a lot of slide presentations on campus at the time, and so we would use these. And so these are just a few of the different pictures that I took back in the late 80s. And the two pictures at the top there, we were doing, Doris Moody was the head of the pre-professional programs, and she wanted to put together some materials to promote her program using a young man there as a model, and modeling different choices between like pre-dentistry or pre-medicine or pre-pharmacy and pre-engineering, that kind of thing. So those were a lot of fun. We took about 6 or 8 different pictures in different outfits. But then this is where things got really interesting for me as far as a technical photographer, was large format 4x5 film here. And the 3 campus scenes here on the left and the bottom, those were pictures I took on campus that were made into postcards that were sold in the bookstore for a number of years. And the picture up on the top right were some nursing students, and that was taken at the medical center in Macon to promote, to use on a recruiting poster that the nursing program was doing. But one thing, I want to take a minute here when we're talking about film, and I intended to set up this camera before the presentation, and just kind of use it as a prop. But then I realized that it would be interesting if you'll give me a few minutes to show you what we had to go through to take these pictures back in the days of film. Of course, now we all know to take a picture, we just reach in our pocket and we pull this out and we click and we have a picture. And really with digital cameras, larger digital cameras, it's not a lot different. These are a little bit different though, in what you have to do to get a technically high quality and better picture for print reproduction. You have to get to your scene that you're trying to photograph, and you have to put the camera on the tripod securely, hopefully. Then you have to open the camera up and take the lens cap off. And then you have these film holders. And what you have to do for each picture that you take, you have to go in the dark room, turn out all the lights, take your box of film, and you have to open these holders up. And they're kind of cantankerous. And then you have to feel a sheet of film out of the box. And you see the notches that are on the top right corner of the film, the edge of the film there. You feel that's how you can tell in the dark what kind of film you're using. Each type of film had a different series of notches in it. So, and you have to feel that, and you have to put it under these little ridges in here very carefully so it lays flat. And then you have to fold this flap in, put the dark slide in, all right? And you get to do the other side. Oops, and see, that can happen. You have to get it in the groove there. All right, okay, so now we've got two sheets of film loaded. And so you look on this ground glass, you open up the aperture of the lens, and you get to see this. And this, by the time it gets on the ground glass back here, by the time it gets on the ground glass, it's upside down and backwards. So you have to orient yourself. When you're making adjustments, you have to realize that the image you're seeing is upside down and backwards. And it's also very dim, which is why, and this is not just an old movie gimmick. It's very dim. In order to see, more often than not, what you're composing, you've got to get under here and focus and compose. Then, when you get everything right, you have to take a meter, and what was more common, I'm sorry I didn't bring it with me, but it was a spot meter that looks like a little pistol sort of thing, with a lens on the front and an eyepiece on the back, and you would point it like in the darkest thing in your scene, say Jim's pants there, and it would read a certain thing, and then you pointed at the lightest thing, say the white on the sweater there, that would be the lightest. And so you take those different little spots of light and dark, and you figure out what you estimate the best exposure is supposed to be. So you set the lens aperture and the shutter speed accordingly, and you have to close the aperture so you don't fog your film. When you take your film holder, pop it in there, pull the dark slide out. Now that exposes the film. Cock your shutter, cheese, and you take the picture. Right? This is white on one side, black on the other. Just sort of a code. So you put it in with the black side out. That way you know that has been exposed. Then you take it out, and if you want to take another one, you put the film holder back in. That's how you took a picture back in the 1980s, like that. A little bit more complex than a digital camera. Then you have to take these things in the dark room. Again, turn out the light, take your film out, put them in the series of trays, and run them through for about 30 minutes, hang them up to dry. That's processing your film. So, like I said, I just wanted to kind of show you a bit of what we went through back in the film days to make a picture like that. But that was, to me, that was a lot of fun. And I'll tell you, the other thing as far as black and white goes, and this is Ansel Adams. Is everyone familiar with Ansel Adams? Okay, landscape photographer. He came out with a series of 3 books. Do you remember the titles? The camera, the negative, And the print, yeah, I think that the camera, the negative, and the print were the three books. And what he outlined in the negative was he created the zone system. You know, I told you, you use the spot meter, Jim's pants being black, the sweater being kind of white there. So that would be zone 0. That would be zone 10. And you have these zones of gray in between. And so what you do is you calibrate your camera, your film, thank you, and your darkroom procedures. But you would take these literally different squares of black to white, you would take a picture of them, process the film, and then you would go through these scientific steps to calibrate all of your procedures. And it was tedious. It took at least a week of dedicated effort in the darkroom to get all that done. But after you did, if you spent that time calibrating all of your procedures, it was incredible how much easier it made taking pictures and getting the results you wanted more often than not. But see, that was the kind of technical stuff that I just loved, and that's what I loved about using that kind of camera, that kind of film, and that sort of technology. That's another, just a picture of just the frame itself. So, as I said about early Georgia College stuff, it was sort of trying to find my way in taking pictures, and I tried to sort of use rules of composition in a lot of the pictures I took. This was a very popular picture for a number of years. It got used in a lot of publications, thankfully. And you see it's sort of that vanishing point of the perspective there that was really enjoyable. And this was a picture I took on Front Campus International Day one year, and they had this big earth ball, and the kids would come from the local schools, and I just happened to catch this young woman on top of the ball and this international student. I just thought that was a wonderful thing. But the way to me to get that into the frame better was to tilt my camera, and so it would sort of follow the rule of thirds. So if you see, he's sort of on the right third, she's on the left third, and the earth ball is on the bottom third there, so it sort of brings the rule of thirds into play. A little interesting side story. The young woman there eventually became a student at Georgia College, and when she came, we crossed paths on campus. She said, "Hey, you probably don't remember me, but you took a picture of me years ago on the earth ball." I said, "I did, how about that?" So anyway, got a lot of small town. Stan Aldridge was our former athletic director for a long time at Georgia College. He retired. We did a profile of him, and he retired to his house there right behind Little Fishing Creek Golf Course. And he said his favorite thing to do after they moved out there, being retired, is get on his tractor and just run his tractor throughout the yard. So I got him to pull his tractor there with you see kind of the sun behind him, so it's illuminating the back of his head there. And I did actually light the front of his face to fit it in the shadow, just a little on-camera fill flash. Sorry, as much as I hate that. But again, it sort of followed the rule of thirds here. He put his head up in the top third, and the big round steering wheel in the bottom third. But I really enjoyed that one. This is a picture I took in the Blackbridge Hall Art Gallery. They were doing an exhibit that contained a lot of mobiles. And this class of students came in to look at it. And of course, as I was standing there trying to take their pictures, I couldn't do it because the mobiles kept kind of getting in the way of the faces of the student. And somehow I just got the idea, well, gee, let me just drop down to the floor here. And boom, it just sort of opened it up. And still sort of followed the rule of thirds, where a lot of the art was filling the top third, and yet the students were on the bottom third. And I was able to see everything that way. And so that was sort of a fun, probably an accident more than intentional. The Georgia College logo changed, as it did a number of times, including the name. So they started giving the t-shirts with the logo on the back to the incoming freshmen. And I enjoyed trying to find the logo in certain pictures. And so I went out to a baseball game and saw this young man sitting there behind home plate. And everything just seemed to line up well. And so I took that, and you see again, it's sort of that vanishing point of perspective there that I enjoyed about that picture. So now, I've always really liked the techniques behind lighting pictures and stuff. And I have to tell a story here too before we get into this segment. One thing with photography also is, as I say, not to forget the why. Why are you taking a photograph? Like I said earlier, asking the people, maybe not as direct as, why do you want me to take this? But what do you want this picture for? What are you trying to say? Who are you trying to say it to? That kind of stuff. Why are you taking the picture? And that's a really important thing to always keep in mind. But there was a good story I read just a few weeks ago. Zach Arias is an editorial photographer in Atlanta, and I really admire his philosophy of photography. And he said before he started his professional photography career, he worked at a Kinko's in Atlanta. And a customer brought in this picture, this really ratty little 4x6 picture of a person, and said, would you please copy this picture and enlarge it to 8x10 so we can put it next to this person's casket at his funeral tomorrow. And Zach looked at the picture and said, sure, we'll do that. And he looked at it, and he was horrified by this terrible snapshot with some sort of element in the foreground that was really distracting. And he just hated the thought of this particular picture being what people remembered of this person when they went to his funeral. So he spent an inordinate amount of time in Photoshop trying to make this picture look better for the situation, much to his boss's chagrin. His boss was not happy with how much time he was spending away from other work he needed to do. But Zach said after he quit that job, which was shortly after that, and started his professional career, he said that stuck with him, and it has always stuck with him, that he wants to take pictures of people that he knows can represent that person well if it is used at the funeral. So the first picture kind of brings that point to mind. This was a picture I took back in 2002 of our recently really departed art historian Tina Yarborough. And this picture was taken because she had written a paper that became an introductory segment for the catalog of an exhibit that the Metropolitan Museum of Art was doing with Edward Munch. And Tina was a worldwide acknowledged expert on Edward Munch. And she collected a bunch of Munch quiche, and her students were constantly bringing her these different things, and so she had all this stuff in her office. So when I was tasked with taking a picture of her to go with this profile we were doing for her catalog inclusion, I wanted to get her surrounded by her Munch quiche, but I wanted the picture to look sort of like Munch's most famous picture, The Scream. And so, the Scream, where there's bright yellow light on one side and kind of this pinkish glow on the other. So I wanted to try and replicate that. And so the first thing I did was put a light with a yellow gel over here on the left side of the camera. And then I put a light over on a pink light over on the right side, got her to give me a Scream impression. And so that was the picture we ended up with, which she, fortunately, just was such a good sport. She dearly loved. But that picture I had to blow the dust off of from the archives because, like I said, the art department used that picture a lot to promote a series of events that they put on this summer honoring Tina. So I was really proud that they wanted to use that picture. This is another picture. This was another story that the college got a lot of national and international press for. Wayne Glopa was a longtime English professor, and he was the chairman for a number of years of the committee that selected the word of the year. And so we were going to do a profile of him, and I got the idea, well, why don't I get him to spell out some of the nominees, some of the words they were considering for word of the year on the Scrabble board, and take a picture of it. So I got in his office, and this is the first thing that I saw when I got my camera where I wanted. This was the ambient light in his office. So I set up a large diffuse light, like an umbrella light, in front of him there on the right to sort of soften up his look there. And then I took another light, a small strobe, and put it kind of in the back of his office that would sort of simulate the light coming in from the window that was in the back of his office there. And so he's puzzling, and I'm doing this while he's puzzling over trying to spell out these potential words of the year there, and then asked him to give me the look that he thought of when they were going through all this stuff. And there was his confused look again, which I thought was just perfect, so I enjoyed that one. A few years later, we revisited the word of the year story, and Pluto, this was the year that Pluto was the word of the year. It was sort of like if you get kicked out of a group or an organization, they said you've been Plutoed. And so I got the idea this year to try and spell out that word with Campbell's vegetable soup. And yes, it took 3 cans of vegetable soup before I could find the appropriate letters to spell Pluto. So I put the bowl here on a table in our little staff lounge in our department and set up a light there that would, and to illuminate kind of just the bowl and leave the things around it just a little bit darker, I fabricated, it's called a snoot that you put on the front of a light that narrows the beam of light down. And what I just took a simple piece of black construction paper, rolled it into a tube, taped it up, stuck it on the front of the flash, and that sort of focused that beam of light on the bowl of soup there. Then our poor administrative assistant, Erin Warnock, happened to walk in at the wrong time for her. So I said, hey, sit down here. I need a model so I can test my main light, which I put over here on the left to go into Wayne's face when he came in. Got him to come in a few minutes later, and boom, that's what we ended up with. Wayne was such a good sport. He was such a great actor. I enjoyed working with him. And it's just a pretty simple picture of Marty Lamon, who's the head of creative writing at George College, and he needed a new picture to go with some publication that he was doing. And so I wanted to sort of kind of got into his office and wanted to kind of give a little warm glow off to the right here, and I set up again a soft light over to the left and got him to sit at his desk with some of his publications in front of him. He really liked that picture and used that for a long time. This was a picture I did in my darkroom. We had just kind of reinvigorated the photography minor at the college, and it was now, and it had been moved into the art department, and we got a new chair of the art department. He wanted to promote this a little more. So here I'm trying to get my darkroom set up, and I guess this is one of my first selfies here. I got my camera set up on a tripod and put the self-timer. Actually, I triggered this obviously by my hand, but then I used the self-timer. And you see I've got this flash sitting on the counter to the right with a red gel to simulate the safe light in the dark room. And for the enlarger here, the enlarger wouldn't quite put out as much light as I needed through the little lens. So I took the head off of the enlarger and took one of my flashes and set it down in the enlarger and made it shine down onto the baseboard of the enlarger, which then bounced up and was going to illuminate my subjects. And boom, here they are. That's Richard Liu, the chair of the art department. And this was one of my student workers at the time, and so they used that picture to promote the photography courses. This was a story to promote these 2 professors that were putting together some Constitution Week events. And in the government sociology department, they had a bulletin board with the Constitution Week, a little handbill plugged up there. The snoot I talked about earlier, same sort of thing. Just put a tube on the front of my flash and pointed it at that banner so it would eliminate it and sort of throw the other things a little darker. Another student worker who was practicing as a model there had a kind of soft light on her, and the trick there was sort of balancing my main light that was going to illuminate the two professors without washing out, without really impacting the bulletin board in the background. So that was kind of a delicate juggling act there. Brought the two professors in, and there's what we ended up with. So this just, every year after the students left for the semester, for the fall semester, I would go into the old governor's mansion and take pictures of the holiday decorations there. I would start in the very top room and just go to every room and just work my way down to the basement taking pictures. And I didn't realize how important this picture was of the front door wreath looking onto the Christmas tree in the rotunda until I didn't take it one year. And the emails and the phone calls that I got, it's like, okay, sorry, I'll do that again next year. But this is kind of how I assembled this picture. I was already taking pictures in the little front entry area there. So I had a light, see, I had two lights sort of shine up into the white ceiling, which sort of created a soft light that kind of filled that room. And then I put another flash in the rotunda, which would help sort of illuminate it and illuminate the Christmas tree. And then I sort of lightened that up and darkened the entryway a little and put a light where it would shine on the wreath and kind of illuminate that. And so that's what we ended up with there. Changed the perspective just a little so I could show the campus leaf medallion that the light was hanging by, and also kind of hide that ugly shadow of the pendant light that was hanging up there. This was another year that I did kind of the same thing. The decorations always change, and they're always fascinating. This was another year that I decided to change things up just a little bit, move out to the front porch and incorporate the shutter doors on the front and the entablature that proclaims that is the executive mansion. Here's a picture. Every year the women's basketball team wanted to do kind of a thematic picture at the beginning of the season that they would put on their schedule posters. So one year, somehow Coach Carrick wrangled an operating room at the Oconee Regional Medical Center. And so they provided us with enough scrubs and stuff for all of the women's basketball players. So I started off with two little strobes in the back that have blue gels on them. And then a main light that was to illuminate players that were going to surround the operating table in the front there. And so I'm trying to find my balance to give the scene a little bit more drama. And so now it's starting to come together a little better to get my exposure kind of dialed in. And we bring the players in, and boom, that's what we ended up with. Fortunately, in Photoshop, I was able to go in and bring the players out a little more in the background so they didn't get completely lost. Now this picture has a bit of a backstory to it. That was my supervisor at the time, Zach Kincaid, and Zach was a bit of a prankster. He liked practical joke. So this was a picture we were going to take for the front cover of Connection magazine, Connection being the alumni magazine for the college. And we were featuring Mike Digby, who was a long-time chair of the government sociology department. He'd been with the college for more than 35 years, I'm pretty sure. But we were going to put, or Zach's intention was to put Mike Digby and his colleague Larry Elowitz there about where he's standing, and then other faculty and staff members of the government